This is a pretty freaky thing that happened to me a while back on the 4th of July. The people who live in my neighborhood tend to really go all out during this time. For days, they are letting off fireworks. But on the 4th, everyone brings out the big ones and they do them all night long. I was home alone. My parents had gone to visit relatives for the 4th. I stayed home. Being a teenager, it was always great when you get the house to yourself for a while. I didn't have any parties or anything like that though. I just took the few days to watch TV and eat a lot of junk food. On the 4th, it was actually a bit louder than usual. The fireworks started during the day. I couldn't tell what the exact fireworks being used were, but I knew they were very loud. When it gets to be night time, most of the people in the neighborhood go out on their porch to look, watch or set off their own fireworks. I really didn't care too much to do that, though. I just remained in the living room and tried to read a bit. An hour into nightfall, it was loud. The fireworks were constant. I imagine that this is what it would be like to have been in the Blitz in World War II. I couldn't watch TV and it kept making it very difficult for me to read. As I was sitting there, I suddenly heard a loud noise that definitely was not a firework. It actually sounded like glass breaking in my basement. I immediately looked up from my book. The first thought was that someone was setting off some firework close to my home and it hit and broke that window. We had one of those basements that was not really underground on one side, sitting on the side of a hill. Worried that the house might catch on fire, I got up and ran to get our fire extinguisher. I grabbed it, got up and ran over to the basement door. During this, the fireworks were still going off, of course, so it was a bit nerve-wracking. I ran down the stairs to our fully finished basement and I didn't see a fire. I flipped on the light and almost fell on my ass when I saw someone standing there. There was a broken window and he was over by my dad's bar and he was grabbing bottles of liquor and putting them in a bag. He of course noticed when I turned the light on. Turning around, he saw me and at first he did nothing. He was a really big and scary looking dude. I didn't know exactly what to do. He didn't have that problem though. He came towards me, brandishing one of the bottles. Fortunately, even though I was hesitant and he was bigger than me, I remembered that I had brought a fire extinguisher down to the basement with me. Acting through what seemed like impulse, I pulled the lever and sprayed the guy with the hose. It stopped him and nearly knocked the large man off his feet. What was important was that it gave me time to run up the stairs, close the basement door and lock it. I called the police immediately, telling them someone had broken in. They came, but the guy was long gone by that point. He still stole several bottles of alcohol though. The police filed a report. They didn't catch the guy. Thankfully he never came back either. My family asked me if I wanted to go with them to check out the fireworks on the 4th of July. I was 16 years old at the time. I really didn't want to go. Not that I had anything at all against the fireworks, but I really wanted to go out drinking with my friend Matt. We figured that we would break into the abandoned school building in the area. Lots of teenagers would do that and it was a well-known place for drinking and smoking weed where the police would leave you alone. I met up with Matt and he had scored some weed too. I didn't smoke it all too often, but every once in a while I would. He was a bit worried that being the 4th, a lot of people would have broken into the school. Whenever we had gone before, we had never come across any other teenagers. Like normal, we snuck through an opening in the fence that surrounded the place. At that point, everything still seemed fine. There wasn't really anything to indicate that anyone else would be there. We went behind the building and there was a broken door we used to get in. Still, there was no indication that we weren't alone. We found a room and we began smoking the weed and drinking a little bit. It was really nice. We weren't too far away from the firework display that we couldn't hear the fireworks going off in the sky though. We were probably in there for over an hour when Matt gave me a really weird look. "Did you hear that?" he asked me. I told him that I could hear the fireworks. He shook his head and told me that wasn't what he meant. "I think I heard something in here." I thought maybe he was just enjoying the weed a little too much. He insisted though that he heard something in another room. When I suggested it was probably just more teenagers drinking, he decided we should go look for them and see if they wanted to hang out. I really didn't care too much to do that, but I went ahead and went with him. We were walking down the hallway. I still hadn't heard anything. But Matt even told me again that he heard some noises. I began to think that maybe Matt was messing with me or trying to scare me or something. I had to brace myself, waiting for him to try and scare me or something. I then heard something too. It was a firecracker, it had to be. I may have even had heard it before but mistook it for something from the display. There had to be someone in one of the other rooms letting off fireworks. No big deal really. Fireworks were illegal for just anyone to have. The displays were done by the city. We came here for illegal drinking and illegal smoking, so it made sense someone might come there for illegal fireworks. So we found the room. There was an open doorway and there was a little bit of light coming from it. We decided to go through the doorway and introduce ourselves. Matt told me he'd offer them weed so they didn't think we would narc on them or anything. We looked in the doorway and froze. There were two people in the room, but they were dressed as clowns. One was sitting on the floor with a bunch of firecrackers in his hand. The other was standing up and facing the door. He had a huge sparkler in his hand. You know how when someone has a sparkler, they write words in the air? He wrote, "Hi," with the sparkler to us. The other one quickly lit a firecracker and threw it at us. It popped loud enough to make my ears ring. Matt grabbed my arm and yelled, and we bolted. We tore down the hallway, boots pounding on broken tile. Behind us, I heard footsteps fast, deliberate. I risked a look back. They were following us. The standing clown sparkler still flared and flickered in the dark as they chased us through the empty halls. We scrambled out the broken door, stumbled over weeds and broken concrete, slipped through the fence, and didn't stop running until we hit the main street. The whole time, I expected to hear footsteps catching up a clown's gloved hand grabbing my shoulder, but they never did. When we finally looked back, the school was just a dark, silent shape against the bursts of fireworks in the sky. No one followed us out. I don't know if they were just other kids messing around, or older creeps waiting for someone dumber than us. They could have easily caught us if they wanted to. But they didn't. Maybe they just wanted us to see them. I don't know. I was 11 years old when it happened, a night I'll never forget. It was the 4th of July, and like every year, our neighborhood turned into a block party. The whole street was closed off, grills smoking, kids with sparklers in their hands, music echoing down the road. Families brought out tables covered with food and drinks, and everyone knew everyone. It always felt safe. I remember my parents were busy setting up near the grill, chatting and laughing with the neighbors. They asked me to keep an eye on the house while they handled the food. But I was 11, bored and restless. So when my friends came running over, asking me to go check out the other streets. I didn't even think twice. I left with them. I didn't even bother locking the door. We spent what felt like forever running up and down the nearby blocks watching bigger fireworks in the distance, pretending to be brave when the loud ones popped too close. It was one of those perfect summer nights when you felt like nothing could go wrong. But when I came back home, everything changed. I still remember it so clearly, stepping onto our porch, wiping sweat off my forehead, hearing the crackle of fireworks behind me. I reached for the door, but I noticed something from the outside. The light in our guest room, it was on. The guest room was on second floor, so I saw it from the porch. At first, I thought maybe my mom had gone inside for something. But then, through the half-open window, I saw it. A dark shape, not a clear person, but a shadow, gliding across the wall. It paused, then moved again, slow, like it knew exactly what it was doing. My heart dropped. I couldn't move, my legs felt frozen to the floor. Every part of my brain screamed run, but I just stood there, staring. When I finally snapped out of it, I ran. I bolted back down the street, nearly tripping over kids and chairs. I found my mom by the food table, my voice shaking so bad I could barely get the words out. "There's someone in the house." She looked at me like I'd just told her the fireworks were fake, then all the color drained from her face. She grabbed my dad, and within seconds, a few neighbors followed them. They didn't say a word, just moved together like a silent search party. I stayed outside, trying not to cry, listening to the fireworks that now sounded too much like gunshots. Then the shouting started, crashes, footsteps, someone yelling, "Call the cops." I didn't want to hear what they found. When they dragged him out, I stayed hiding behind my mom. It wasn't just that they'd found a man inside, it was where they'd found him. Not even in the guest room. The man was hiding in my closet. I heard someone say he was just standing there in the dark, pressed behind my clothes, waiting for who knows what. When they pulled him past me, he didn't struggle, he just stared at me like he knew me. Like he'd been waiting for me. When the cops took him away, my parents were furious but also shaken. They yelled at me for leaving the door open. They grounded me for a whole week. But deep down, I think they were just relieved it hadn't turned into something worse. To this day, every 4th of July, when the fireworks start and the neighborhood parties kick off, everything from that day comes to my mind.